Screams cut through the cul-de-sac in Atlanta, Georgia, on Briarwood Lane, as a two-story home spits flame like a furnace. Sirens wail in the distance. Lawn sprinklers hiss, useless. Neighbors spill onto driveways, faces orange in the glow. A window blows out. Glass rains on the hydrangeas. Inside, James Carter kicks the front door while smoke claws his throat. "Evelyn," he coughs. A shape stumbles from the hallway. Evelyn, robe singed, clutching a shoebox of photos. Heat rolls over them. The ceiling moans. They lunge together into the night. James collapses to a knee. Evelyn drops the box. Pictures scatter on the lawn like bright birds. A neighbor throws a blanket over her shoulders. Another dials, hands shaking. "Everyone back!" a firefighter shouts, leaping off the engine as it screeches up. Hose couplings slam, valves crank, water arcs. But the fire has a head start and a cruel memory. A camera phone lifts. Someone whispers, "How did this happen?" Before we continue the story, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on your notifications for more daily stories. Drop a comment to let us know which city or country you're watching from. 48 hours earlier, morning sunlight slid across the same porch, peaceful as a postcard. James trimmed rose canes. Evelyn hummed, chalk marking a grocery list. On the doormat, a crisp white envelope waited like a trap. He opened it. HOA violation. Font loud as a shout. Improper hedge height. Penalty. Deadline. Threat. He laughed. Because what else can you do? Evelyn did not laugh. Another envelope arrived at lunch. Mailbox color out of compliance. By dinner, a third. Planter shape. Inconsistent with community aesthetic. The day soured. Across the street, a silver SUV idled. Behind the wheel sat Hannah Mitchell, HOA board hawk, sunglasses reflecting the Carter's yard like a target range. Her phone camera clicked once, twice, 3 times. Evelyn smoothed her dress and walked to the curb. "Miss Mitchell, is there a problem?" Hannah lowered the window an inch. "There's a standard. We all follow it." Her smile was neat and mean. The window glided back up. That week became a list of little cuts. A tape measure appeared at dawn. A citation at noon. A warning taped over a welcome sign. Neighbors waved, then didn't. Conversations kinked when the Carters drew near. Evelyn baked lemon bars for the block potluck. A note arrived instead. Event cancelled pending compliance review. The pan cooled untouched. She set it in the fridge beside yesterday's hope. James started a folder. He labeled it like a teacher. Incidents. Into it went letters, printed emails, screenshots of timestamps. He was not a man who loved conflict. He was a man who recognized patterns. At night, he watched the street. Headlights swept the walls. Twice he spotted the silver SUV glide past, slow as a judgment. He called their son. Alex listened. He was the city's mayor, voice trained for calm, but he was also their child. "Document everything," he said. "I'm coming by Friday." Thursday, the HOA posted a notice to the community forum. Reminder, uniformity preserves value. Underneath, anonymous comments bloomed like mold. Some people think rules don't apply. Property standards are for everyone. If you can't follow guidelines, the sentence trailed into teeth. Evelyn scrolled, jaw tight. "We have followed every rule," she whispered. James took her hand. "We will keep our dignity," he said, even as the words tasted like ash. That night, wind rattled the oak. The neighborhood slept or pretended to, at 2:11 a.m. A porch camera across the street woke. A figure moved inside its grainy cone of light. Hood up, gloves on, carrying a red can that sloshed. The figure paused at the Carter's gate, looked left, looked right. The latch clicked. Then the feed glitched. A smear of static, a stutter of frames. When the picture cleared, the figure was closer to the house. Afternoon, a committee walkthrough appeared without warning. 2 board members with clipboards and Hannah, Queen Bee. They photographed the porch swing as if it was contraband. "Non-standard fixture," one murmured. "It's been here 10 years, James said. Hannah's answer was a shrug that felt like a shove. At the mailbox, a neighbor named Lucille hesitated. She used to bring peach jam. Today she studied her shoes. "I'm so sorry about all this," she whispered when Hannah drifted out of earshot. "You know how she gets." Evelyn's smile was soft and tired. "I know how people get when they're afraid of her." Lucille's apology collapsed into silence. That evening, the HOA thread pinged again. Notice of lion consideration. The phrase detonated in James's chest. He read the clause twice, then a third time, because fear scrambles language. Evelyn closed the laptop. "We will not be bullied out of our home." It said of maniacal calming. Alex called back, voice lower now. "I'm moving meetings. I'll be there tomorrow." Evelyn protested. She hated to pull him from his city, but the quiver in her, "We're fine," betrayed her. He heard it. "Mom, I'm coming." Sunset bled into Briarwood Lane. Sprinklers ticked. A bicycle bell rang somewhere. In the silver SUV, Hannah recorded another video, narrating in a hush only she could hear. "Pattern of non-compliance," she said, as if speaking to a courtroom that hadn't convened yet. Later, the Carters sat at the kitchen table, the house humming its warm, familiar song. James laid the folder between them. "We'll show this to the board on Saturday," he said. "We'll show it to anyone." Evelyn nodded. To anyone. Her hand found his, and for a moment the storm stayed outside. But storms learn doors. A soft scrape at midnight, metal to metal. James lifted his head from the pillow, listening. Silence. Then a faint chemical tang, wrong as a lie. He padded to the window and parted the curtain. The street was empty, moonlight quiet as breath. He stayed. He waited 5 minutes, then 10. Somewhere a garage opened and closed. An owl blinked from the oak. He made tea, watched the clock grind past 1. At last the smell thinned, closer and unmistakable. It was Hannah. She raised the can. The morning after the fire, Atlanta moved like nothing had happened, commuters sipping coffee, buses sighing at stops, children hoisting backpacks. But on Briarwood Lane, the air still smelled of ruin. Ash clung to the sidewalk where neighbors tried not to look too long. The Carters sat beneath a borrowed canopy, sipping water from Red Cross bottles. Evelyn held herself small in the folding chair, James stiff at her side, staring at the remains of what used to be their life. A black sedan rolled up, unmarked but official. The door opened and Alex Carter stepped out. He wasn't wearing a suit. No polished tie, no crisp flag pin on the lapel. Just rolled sleeves and eyes that had not slept. For once, he wasn't the mayor walking into a press conference. He was a son walking into a battlefield. "Dad, Mom," his voice cracked against the smoke. Evelyn rose, her blanket falling from her shoulders as if she remembered she was someone's mother before she was anyone's victim. Alex hugged her, held her so tightly she squeaked. Then he clasped James's hand, firm and silent. James said only, "They burned us out." Alex nodded once. He didn't trust his voice yet. 2 detectives approached, notepad ready. "Mayor Carter," one began, but Alex cut him with a glance. "Today I'm their son. Call me Alex." They asked the same questions again. Who might hold a grudge? Had there been disputes? Any suspicious behavior? James gestured toward the stack of manila folders, his meticulous record of incidents. Citations, photographs, emails. All roads pointed one direction. "Hannah Mitchell," Evelyn said finally, the name tasting bitter. "You'll find her fingerprints all over this." The detectives scribbled, professional masks in place. But when Alex leaned in, his tone made the air stiffen. "You don't shelve this one," he told them. "You don't drown it in paperwork. My parents lost their home. This is arson. This is a hate crime. And if you hesitate," he paused, jaw hard, "then you're part of it. And now you have a mother." The detectives didn't argue. That afternoon, news vans lined the street. Microphones chased Alex as he left the ruins. "Mayor Carter, Do you believe the fire was racially motivated? Is it true an HOA member is under suspicion? Alex stopped. Camera's word. He had perfected that look, the one where grief sits behind glass, but authority steals the edges. My parents have lived here for over 30 years, he said. They gave to this community. They raised me here. And last night, their home was burned to the ground. Evidence suggests it wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. He let the silence stretch, each second cutting. No one is above the law, not in this city, not even in this neighborhood. A reporter asked, "Do you mean Hannah Mitchell?" Alex didn't flinch. "I mean anyone who thought fire could erase dignity. They were wrong." Then he walked away, leaving the cameras buzzing like flies on heat. The HOA scrambled. Emergency emails flew, subject lines crisp with panic. Urgent meeting attendance mandatory. By evening, the community center parking lot overflowed. Residents filed in, avoiding one another's eyes, guilt heavy as humidity. The Carters came, escorted by Alex. Their presence made the room shift. Conversations hushed, papers rustled. Hannah was already seated at the head of the table, blouse ironed, smile precise. She tapped her pen as if this was just another line item on the agenda. "Order," she said smoothly. "Let's bring this meeting to order." James muttered under his breath. "You brought something else to order." Evelyn squeezed his hand. Hannah adjusted her glasses, launching into a monologue about community standards and shared values. Her voice droned, but underneath the words lay the same message as always: conformity, control, power. Alex sat quietly, hands folded. He wasn't here to trade jabs. He was here to wait. Then a resident, Lucille, timid until now, raised her hand. "Hannah," she said, voice shaking, "people saw your car, the night of the fire, near the Carter's driveway." The room rippled. Hannah's pen froze. She smiled, but it cracked at the edges. "Rumors," she said. "Tragedy makes people irrational." Another neighbor spoke. "My camera caught someone, hooded, carrying a can that looked like you." Hannah laughed once, too sharp. "If anyone has actual evidence, let the police handle it. This is a community meeting, not a courtroom." The Carters sat still, Evelyn's knuckles white on her lap. Alex finally leaned forward, voice calm but loud enough to slice through. "Sometimes a courtroom comes to you," he said. The room stilled. Hannah's eyes flicked to his, calculating. And then, as if on cue, the doors at the back of the hall opened. Two uniformed officers stepped inside, eyes sweeping the room. "Hannah Mitchell," one called. Every head turned. The community center air thinned. Folding chairs creaked as people half stood, half sat, caught between curiosity and fear. At the front, Hannah kept her smile, but her hands had gone still. "Hannah Mitchell," the officer repeated, stepping forward. "We need you to come with us to answer some questions." A hush rolled the room flat. Hannah rose slowly, smoothing her blouse as if ironing reality. "Of course," she said, voice bright. "Happy to cooperate. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding." She reached for her purse. "Ma'am," the officer said, "please leave the bag on the table." The brightness dimmed. "Is that necessary?" "It is." He glanced to the second officer, then back. "We have a warrant." Chairs scraped. Someone gasped. Hannah's eyes flicked to the Carters, then to Alex, who hadn't moved. He just watched, jaw set, like a man learning the weight of a new kind of silence. The officer unfolded a paper. "Arson, criminal damage to property in the first degree. We'll be executing a search on your vehicle as well." Hannah blinked. The room swayed on its feet. Then her smile returned, tighter, meaner. "You're making a mistake." No one answered. The cuff click sounded louder than any siren. Outside, the night had turned thin and cool. Blue lights washed Briarwood Lane, reflecting off windshields and worry. Neighbors crowded the sidewalk, pretending not to stare. The silver SUV idled in Hannah's driveway like an accomplice called to the stand. "Keys, please," an officer said. Hannah hesitated, then handed them over with 2 fingers, as if the metal might stain her. A tech popped the hatch, lifted a storage compartment. He crouched, stilled, then lifted something wrapped in a contractor bag. A red can, scuffed. The nozzle ringed with a sticky sheen. A ripple moved through the crowd, first whisper, then wave. Hannah's face opened and closed, shock trying on restraint and failing to find her size. "Tag it," the tech said. Across the street, Evelyn leaned into James and didn't trust her legs. Alex stepped between them and the spectacle, a wall in rolled sleeves. "You don't have to look," he said. "I do," Evelyn answered, voice small and steel together. "This time I do." Morning found the courthouse awake before the city. Reporters staked out the steps, camera tripods splayed like bird legs. Inside, the first appearance calendar droned through shoplifting, bad checks, a bar fight that ended sloppy. Then the clerk called it State v. Hannah Mitchell. She walked in wearing county orange and a lawyer like armor. Linda Chambers, famous for calm. Hannah sat. She didn't look at the gallery. She didn't look at the Carters. She fixed her gaze on a spot only she could see and waited for it to change the room. The assistant district attorney, Alex Green, rose. "Judge, the state seeks bond with conditions. The facts show premeditation." He spoke carefully, a man placing bricks. "A red portable gas can recovered from Ms. Mitchell's vehicle. Security footage from 2:11 a.m. shows a hooded figure approaching the Carter's gate. Retail receipts tie Ms. Mitchell to multiple purchases of accelerant within the week." And, he paused, the gallery leaned. Text messages retrieved by warrant, including one to an HOA chat the evening before the fire. Some people only learn when there are consequences. A murmur rose. The judge's gavel tapped once. Chambers stood, graceful as a metronome. "Your Honor, the state's narrative leaps. Circumstances can be stacked to look like intention. Ms. Mitchell is a homeowner, a volunteer. She has no record, deep ties to Atlanta, and every incentive to appear. If a can is in a trunk, is that criminal? If a neighborhood chat includes frustration, is that motive?" She tilted her head, a gesture calibrated to read as reasonable. "We ask for a modest bond, strict conditions, and the chance to untangle rumor from fact." The judge's eyes traveled the room over cameras, over Alex standing at the back, over James and Evelyn folded together on a bench. "The allegations are grave," she said. "But this is a first appearance, not a trial. A beat. Bond is set at $100,000. Surrender passport. No contact with the Carters or HOA members. GPS monitoring. Home confinement." A polarity shift hummed through the benches. Relief, frustration, both. Chambers nodded once, as if she'd already expected the number. Hannah didn't nod. She stared at the floor like it had betrayed her. On the courthouse steps, microphones turned hungry. "Mayor Carter, do you have a comment? Is this a hate crime? Are you using your office to influence the case?" Alex spoke without notes. "I'm not the prosecutor," he said. "I'm a son. My parents' home was burned. We will cooperate, and we will stay out of the way. But hear me clearly. My family trusts the process, and my city does not tolerate terror by gasoline." Someone shouted, "Is this about the HOA?" He looked straight into the camera. "It's about the law." The clip would run all day. Discovery began to spool. The state sent over their stack. Lab reports, noting accelerant residues on porch boards. A hardware store receipt, time-stamped 10:04 p.m. for fuel and nitrile gloves. Forum screenshots where user KM compliance escalated from rules to warnings to something colder. Defense answered with its own pile. Character letters, HOA minutes showing Hannah even-handedness. A grainy doorbell clip they claimed showed a different gait, a different height. The jury wasn't here yet, but both sides already practiced for them. At home, someone else's spare room, soft with the generosity of friends, Evelyn folded clothes into a suitcase she wasn't sure how to call hers. "What if people believe her?" she said. James sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped. "People will believe whatever helps them sleep," he said. but the truth holds its breath for no one. "I keep hearing the fire," she whispered. After the hoses stopped, he put his arm around her shoulders and, for a long time, said nothing. Sometimes love is accuracy, sometimes it's quiet. The HOA board called an emergency session, this time without cameras. Sweating under the hum of cheap fluorescents, they argued about bylaws and optics. One member suggested stepping down temporarily. Another insisted the real victim was the neighborhood's reputation. Lucille, voice steady for the first time in months, said, "The real victims are the people whose house is gone." Someone finally made a motion. Remove Hannah from her role pending outcome. The motion passed, barely. Word still leaked. It always does. Hannah read the notice in her kitchen, ankle monitor blinking its small, indifferent light. She laughed once, sharp as a snapped pencil. Then she picked up her phone and began to type, fingers flying in a private storm. Preliminary hearing. The small courtroom filled fast neighbors and reporters shoulder to shoulder. The state called the fire investigator first. He walked the judge through the origin point, the V patterns, the lab results. Gasoline range hydrocarbons, he said. Multiple pore patterns. He spoke like a man who hates being the most interesting person in the room. Defense cross-examined. Could faulty wiring mimic these signs? In one place? Maybe, the investigator said. Across 3 separate points? No. The state called the tech who pulled the can from the SUV. Chain of custody. Swabs. Labeled baggies. Clinical nouns piled like bricks. Then the hardware store manager took the stand with a corporate smile. The state held up the receipt. "Do you recognize this?" "Yes." "Do your records reflect the purchaser?" "Yes," he pointed. Her gasps fluttered like birds trapped in a gym. Chambers rose, velvet in the voice. "You sell hundreds of cans a week, sir." "More," he admitted. "And nitrile gloves?" "Boxes," he said, almost apologetically. "So nothing about these purchases is illegal?" "No," he said. "Not until they're used to burn someone's home." The judge cut a glance. "Answer only the question, please." He reddened. "Yes, Your Honor." They saved the hardest for last. The state called Lucille. She sat, hands plucked tight in her lap. "Do you know the defendant?" the ADA asked. "Everyone knows everyone on Briarwood Lane," she murmured. "On the night of the fire, did you observe anything unusual?" Lucille swallowed. "I heard a car. Late. I looked from my window. I saw Hannah's SUV by the Carter's mailbox." She squeezed her eyes shut, opening them to the ceiling. "I wanted to call. I didn't. I thought it would be nothing." The ADA let the sentence hang where regret lives. Chambers stepped forward. "Ms. Lucille, you're grieving." "We all are. Are you certain, under stress, in the dark?" Lucille found something stiff inside herself. "I know what I saw." Silence went long enough to be real. The judge ruled. Probable cause to bind the case over for trial. The gavel found wood. The room exhaled. In the hallway, cameras flared again. Chambers spoke first. "We look forward to trial. We are confident a full airing will show Miss Mitchell's innocence." Then she steered Hannah away, past microphones, past familiar faces gone unfamiliar. Alex and the Carters waited behind. No podium this time. "We're not celebrating," he said quietly. "We're just breathing." A reporter called out, "Is the city considering hate crime enhancements?" Alex glanced to the ADA walking by. Green answered without stopping, "We're reviewing all evidence." The word enhancements trailed like a fuse. That night, the HOA forum lit up. Anonymous handles traded outrage and excuses. A meme, a map, a lie that looked like comfort. Then, a new post from a user with a fresh account. "They're not the only ones who should be worried." Screenshots flew. Fear found old corners to live in. Someone pinged Alex. Someone else pinged the detective. And down on Briarwood Lane, porch lights blinked on 2 at a time, like eyes deciding to stay awake. Evelyn stood at a guest room window, watching a street that wasn't quite hers anymore. "What if this isn't over?" she said. Beside her, James took her hand. "Then we keep going." Down the hall, Alex's phone buzzed a number he didn't recognize. He answered on instinct. A voice came through, tight with urgency. "I work with Hannah," it said. "You need to see something. Check the HOA's private archive, the draft minutes, the ones they never posted." Alex frowned. "Who is this?" But the line had already gone dead. He stared at the screen, the blue light carving the dark. In the next room, his parents breathed, two soft metronomes keeping a house upright. He opened his laptop, fingers hovering over the keys. The glow of the laptop bathed Alex's face, sharp and sleepless. The caller's words itched in his ears. Check the HOA's private archive, the draft minutes. He navigated the HOA portal, password locked and sterile, the kind of site that prided itself on transparency while hiding what mattered. As mayor, he had back channels. As a son, he had desperation. Within minutes, he was staring at a folder tagged, "Drafts do not circulate." His stomach sank. Inside were minutes scrubbed before publication. Sanitized versions had gone live, tidy as a church bulletin. These were the raw cuts. One entry: Board discussed recurring non-compliance at 347 Briarwood, Carter's. Chair expressed concern that uniformity cannot be preserved if exceptions continue. Another: Hannah Mitchell motioned that further action may be necessary if traditional remedies fail. Examples must be set. And then, 1 week before the fire, discussion veered into community image. Chair stated, "Sometimes fires must be lit, metaphorically." The word "metaphorically" hung in quotes. No one had bothered to cut it clean. Alex exhaled, long and quiet. He copied everything into a folder named Evidence. His fingers shook when he closed the lid. Morning, he brought the documents to Ada Green. The prosecutor skimmed, jaw tightening. "This is bigger than a petty feud. This is systemic." Alex leaned forward. "So charge it that way. Make it plain." Green tapped the pages. "This could justify hate crime enhancement. It also paints the whole board complicit, even if they didn't strike the match." "Then let them answer for silence," Alex said. The ADA nodded. "Trials in 4 weeks. We'll use this." Meanwhile, Hannah fumed in house arrest. The ankle monitor beeped whenever she moved too fast. Her lawyer, Chambers, came twice a week with folders of strategy. "They're twisting everything," Hannah hissed. "Minutes are drafts, not law. They're smearing me." Chambers raised a palm. "Juries don't care about drafts. They care about story. If they believe you hated them, the rest is cement. You need to soften, look remorseful, human." Hannah sneered. "Remorseful for what? Following rules?" "Remorseful for perception," Chambers corrected, voice low. "Trials aren't about truth. They're about what 12 people see in you." Hannah stared at the monitor blinking on her ankle. "Then I'll show them what they want to see." The Carters met with victim advocates. Evelyn clutched a stress ball through every meeting. James listened, teacher still, correcting dates and times when lawyers misspoke. When Green asked if they'd testify, Evelyn hesitated. "Reliving it means breathing it again," she said. James placed his hand over hers. "Then we breathe it twice, until justice exhales." 2 nights before jury selection, Alex drove his parents back to Briarwood Lane. The shell of the house had been demolished, the lot flattened. Evelyn stood at the curb, eyes glazed. "It doesn't look like it happened here," she whispered. James shook his head. "It looks like it's waiting to happen again." Alex clenched his fists. "That's why we finish this." From across the street, Lucille waved timidly. Others peeked through curtains. Fear still lived here, but something else did too. Shame, and maybe resolve. Day 1 of trial. The courthouse smelled of coffee and nerves. Reporters crowded the rotunda. The Carters walked in, holding hands, Alex at their side. Hannah entered from a side door, suit pressed, hair neat, eyes trained on some invisible horizon. Judge Reynolds banged the gavel. State v. Hannah Mitchell. Jury seated. Ready, Your Honor. Opening statements. Ada Green first. This case is about fire, not the kind that warms a hearth, the kind that destroys. The defendant, using her power as HOA chair, waged a campaign of harassment rooted in prejudice. When letters and fines failed, she escalated to destruction. Evidence will show she poured accelerant on the Carters' home. Evidence will show intent, and evidence will show hate. Chambers rose. Tragedy invites blame. My client is not perfect, but she is not a criminal. HOA disputes are common, even heated, but suspicion is not proof. You will see holes, gaps, assumptions stacked like kindling. The state hopes you'll strike a match. I ask you not to. The jury leaned, some folding arms, some scribbling notes. The state called the fire captain. He mapped out burn patterns. Photos glowed on monitors, orange frozen in pixels. Multiple points of origin, he said. Accelerant present. The defense pressed. Could faulty wiring mimic these signs? Across 3 rooms? No. Then the state played the porch camera footage. Grainy, black and white, but undeniable. A hooded figure with a can pausing at the gate. Jurors craned. Hannah stared at the table, expression rehearsed. Next came the drafts. Green projected them on the screen. Words floated. Examples must be set. Sometimes fires must be lit. The courtroom air crystallized. Chambers objected. Speculative, prejudicial. But the judge overruled. They may consider it for context. Lucille testified next, voice trembling but eyes steady. I saw her SUV by the Carters' house. I should have spoken sooner. I didn't. Chambers cross-examined, smooth as silk. At night? Stress? Could it have been another vehicle? Lucille met Hannah's eyes. I know what I saw. The jury scribbled harder. At recess, Alex stepped outside with his parents. Cameras lunged. Mayor, are you confident in conviction? Alex spoke softly but clear. I'm confident in truth, and truth doesn't burn. Back inside, Green leaned to Alex in the gallery. Tomorrow we put Evelyn on the stand. Alex's pulse spiked. His mother, reliving it under oath. He looked at her, small but unbowed, smoothing the hem of her skirt. She caught his stare, gave him a smile that reached her eyes, and whispered, "It's time." The bailiff called her name. Mrs. Evelyn Carter, please take the stand. She rose slowly, every eye following. At 70, her frame was still upright, though her hands shook as she placed them on the rail. James reached out once, brushing her sleeve before she walked forward, steady but small in the cavernous courtroom. The clerk held out a Bible. Evelyn pressed her palm against it. Do you swear to tell the truth? I do, she whispered, then lifted her chin. The jury leaned in. Ada Green approached with uncommon gentleness. Mrs. Carter, can you tell us what happened the night of the fire? Her voice trembled at first. It was late. I remember the smell before I remember the sound. A sharp, bitter smell that didn't belong in my kitchen. Then heat. Too much heat. James shouted my name. We ran. She paused, swallowing. I carried a shoebox. Pictures. Our babies. Our life. They fell in the yard. Some burned in the grass before I could save them. Her throat caught. Jurors shifted, some blinking too often. Green nodded softly. And in the days before that night, had anything unusual happened? Yes. Her eyes flicked to Hannah. Letters, notes, warnings, every day, for the height of our hedge, the color of our mailbox, even my flower pots, she said. Our home wasn't uniform. Her voice strengthened. But we followed every rule. We painted, trimmed, replaced. And still, she came, with a tape measure, with her SUV parked outside, watching. Green let the silence breathe before asking, do you see the person in this courtroom who sent those letters? Evelyn's hand trembled, but she raised it. Her finger leveled at Hannah. Her. Hannah didn't flinch, but a muscle in her jaw jumped once, betraying her. Defense cross-exam. Chambers rose, smile measured. Mrs. Carter, you've lived in Briarwood for over 30 years? Yes. And HOA rules have always existed? Yes. But, please, just yes or no. Chambers interrupted softly. So rules weren't new. Compliance wasn't new. Evelyn's lips pressed thin. Not like this. Chambers pivoted. You testified you saw her SUV. At night, in stress. Could it have been another vehicle? Evelyn inhaled. I know my neighbor's car. I know her. People make mistakes, Chambers said gently, especially in fear. Evelyn leaned forward, voice steadier than before. Fear sharpens the eyes. It doesn't blur them. The jury murmured. The judge tapped her gavel. Chambers smiled thinly and returned to her seat. When Evelyn stepped down, James reached for her hand. She sat, body trembling, but her gaze fierce. Alex whispered, You did it, Mom. She whispered back, For all of us. The state called James Carter next. His tone was teacher steady, recounting dates, letters, SUV sightings, the file he kept labeled incidents. Where Evelyn gave emotion, James gave order. Together, their testimonies braided the story tight. By the end, jurors weren't just listening, they were leaning forward, ownership written on their faces. Then came a pivot. Defense called Hannah to the stand. The gallery stirred. Reporters scribbled. Chambers helped her client settle, then asked, Miss Mitchell, did you ever set foot on the Carter's property with ill intent? Hannah's voice was silk on steel. No, never. Did you burn their house? No. Why did you enforce rules so strictly? I was protecting property values. That's my duty. Her tone was clipped, professional. She looked at the jury often, as if daring them to see reason. Then, ADA Green rose for cross. Ms. Mitchell, do these draft HOA minutes refresh your memory? He slid the paper across. The line, sometimes fires must be lit metaphorically. Was that your statement? Hannah's eyes flicked down, then up. It was a figure of speech. So you admit you said it? I admit I was speaking about urgency. Green's voice sharpened. Urgency or threat? I never threatened anyone, she snapped. The courtroom tensed. The mask slipped. Green let the silence hang, then asked, Why did you purchase gasoline and nitrile gloves at 10:04 p.m., hours before the fire? Hannah's mouth opened, closed. For gardening. In the dark of night? For weeds, she stammered. A juror scribbled furiously. Another shook her head. Green pressed once more. So you deny targeting the Carters? Hannah's voice rose, brittle and sharp. They never belonged here. The words rang out before she could catch them. The gallery gasped. Evelyn clutched James's arm. Alex closed his eyes, a single tear escaping, not for weakness, but for the confirmation of what they had always known. The judge struck the gavel hard. Order, order in this court. Hannah's lawyer reached for her arm, whispering frantically, but the damage had already bled into every corner of the room. That night, news outlets looped the clip. Hannah's voice, crisp and venomous. They never belonged here. Headlines didn't wait. HOA leader's mask, slips at trial. Carter's testimony moves jury to tears. On Briarwood Lane, neighbors whispered on porches, shame heavy in their throats. Lucille lit a candle in her window and left it burning through the night. Back in the guest room where the Carters slept, Alex sat at the desk, pen in hand, drafting a statement he knew he'd give whether the jury asked for it or not. His parents' fight had become his city's fight, and maybe something bigger. He paused, staring at the candle flickering through the window across the street, and thought, tomorrow this ends one way or another. The next day, closing arguments begin. The jury will decide not just Hannah's fate, but the soul of Briarwood Lane. The courtroom felt smaller in the morning, as if the night had pressed the walls in. Jurors filed to their seats with the careful movements of people who know they're being watched. Hannah sat rigid, chin high. The Carters clasped hands on the front bench. Alex stood a half step behind them, a quiet presence in a dark suit. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Reynolds nodded to the state. Ada Green rose. No theatrics, just a man with a stack of facts. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not complicated. It is heavy, but it is not complicated. He paced once, slowly. You heard from the fire captain. Multiple points of origin. Gasoline range hydrocarbons. You saw the 211 AM footage. A hooded figure with a red can at the Carter's gate. You heard about the receipt at 10:04 p.m. Gasoline, nitrile gloves. You read the HOA draft minutes. Examples must be set. Sometimes fires must be lit, metaphorically. And finally, you heard the defendant herself say of the Carters, they never belonged here. He let the words settle, then softened. James and Evelyn followed every rule. They tended roses. They baked lemon bars. They paid fines they didn't owe just to stop the paper cuts. But the paper cuts became gasoline. That's not a code dispute. That's hate with a clipboard. A seps of creations sowed. He pointed gently toward the evidence screen. We're not here to punish an unpopular neighbor. We're here because a home burned and a line was crossed. Hold her to the line. He sat. The room exhaled. Defense stood. Linda Chambers smoothed her sleeve, voice tuned to calm. Grief demands a villain, she began. The state has offered you one. She tapped the screen where the grainy porch video paused on a hooded silhouette. You do not see a face, you see a shape. The can in the trunk? Not illegal. The text about consequences? Harsh, yes, but not a confession. The minutes? Drafts. Words. And if my client's words failed her on that stand, if she said something ugly in a moment of pressure that is not proof of arson, do not turn anger into evidence. She stepped closer to the jury rail. Reasonable doubt. It is not a loophole. It is the backbone of law. And when you return that verdict, you are not condoning what happened. You are refusing to guess. She sat. Hannah stared straight ahead, jaw locked. Judge Reynolds instructed the jury burden of proof. Elements of arson. The enhancement they could consider if intent was proven with bias. 12 people rose and vanished into a room with a humming soda machine and a single long table. Time took its shoes off and walked slow. Evelyn traced circles on the bench with a fingertip. James watched the clock until it stopped being numbers and became a metronome. Alex stood at the window and looked down at the cluster of cameras, the city he served, the street where he grew up. Minutes turned into an hour. The hour turned into a second hour. A deputy slipped a styrofoam coffee into James's hand without a word. When the buzzer finally sounded, it cracked the air like lightning. Please rise. The jurors filed back in solemn, lined by duty. The foreperson stood. On the count of arson in the first degree, she read, voice steady. We find the defendant guilty. A sound rippled the gallery, half sob, half exhale. On the special verdict form regarding bias motivation, hate crime enhancement, we find yes. Hannah's fingers clenched the edge of the table so hard her knuckles blanched. Chambers whispered something that sounded like breathe. Evelyn pressed both hands to her heart. James just closed his eyes. Green didn't smile. He nodded once, almost like a soldier told the orders had been carried out. Sentencing, the judge said. In 2 weeks, the defendant is remanded. The deputy stepped to Hannah's side. The cuffs clicked, small and final. For a heartbeat, her eyes flicked toward the Carter's defiance, sparking, then guttering like a wick in wind. She was led out through the side door she had entered, and the room remembered how to murmur. Outside, microphones bloomed. Alex wrapped an arm around his mother's shoulders and faced the press. My parents are not a headline, he said quietly. They are people who did everything right and still watch their life burn. Today is a step toward what's right. The next step is ours, neighbors, boards, leaders. We will rebuild, and we will not confuse uniformity with community ever again. The clip led every broadcast. 2 weeks later, the sentence came down, long years that matched the gravity of the crime. Strict terms that read like a city drawing its own boundary. The judge spoke of responsibility, and the simple, unglamorous work of respecting your neighbor. Hannah offered no statement. The gavel fell. The era ended. But endings don't rebuild houses. On Briarwood Lane, volunteers arrived the next morning. Hammer buckets, thermoses, sun hats, apologies. Lucille came first, throat tight, hands steady. "I brought coffee," she said, "and nails." Evelyn hugged her longer than words require. James unfolded a clipboard labeled "Rebuild a new folder for a new story." Alex tossed his suit jacket in the trunk, slipped on a pair of work gloves, and joined the framing crew. The first wall rose on a count of 3. Strangers became neighbors by the second wall. Between runs to the saw table, teenagers carted lumber. A retired electrician rewired the new kitchen for free. A mason who had never spoken to the Carters beyond a wave set the fireplace stones with the care of a penitent. The city inspector came by unannounced and left smiling. The lot filled with noise, the good kind, hammers, laughter, the snare of a tape measure snapping back. At dusk on the third day, someone brought a sapling for the front yard. The boy mumbled, ashamed of the summer he'd spent watching and not speaking. The crowd stepped back as Evelyn knelt and set the tree in the ground with her palms. She patted the soil firm and whispered something only the roots heard. A week later, Alex stood on a temporary porch for a small vigil. No podium, no seal, just neighbors with candles. The flames made tiny halos in cupped hands. He cleared his throat. "We're not here to relive harm," he said. "We're here to mark a different fire, the kind we keep for one another, the kind that warms." He looked at Hannah's dark, empty house across the way and didn't linger. He looked at Lucille, who met his gaze. He looked at the new tree, slender and insistent. "My mother taught me that dignity isn't loud," he continued. "It just doesn't move. My father taught me that order is love with a schedule. They stayed. We all have to." He turned to Evelyn. "Mom?" She stepped forward, candle trembling slightly, voice not trembling at all. "Thank you for showing up," she said. "Thank you for learning out loud. We'll mess up again, we're people, but we won't be quiet the next time someone's singled out in the name of rules. Not on this street, not in this city." The candles lifted. A soft chorus of amen threaded the gathering. The HOA met under different lights. New bylaws took shape. Anti-harassment provisions, bias training, transparent minutes, a public comment period that actually listened. The phrase, "uniformity preserves value," vanished from the website. Belonging took its place. It wasn't perfect. It was a start. A month later, the Carters moved into a home that smelled of paint and possibility. The mailbox was the exact color they chose, with a tiny brass script, 347. The porch swing, non-standard fixture, returned and creaked a welcome. Evelyn set the lemon bars on a table and laughed when half the street pretended they weren't waiting for them. James hung one framed, smoke-kissed photo by the door. Their wedding day, corners singed like a relic rescued from a fire because it was. Lucille rang the bell with peach jam. The retired electrician brought a fern. The teenagers brought nothing but themselves and stayed to help assemble chairs they'll probably sit in for years. As twilight painted the sky, Alex leaned on the new railing, the sounds of living drifting into the yard, silverware, distant TV chatter, somebody's dog dreaming. He watched his parents rock in the swing. They refused to surrender. He felt the city breathing in and out, and he let himself breathe with it. "Mr. Mayor," a little boy called from the sidewalk. "Can we plant another tree?" "2," Alex said, grinning. "Pick a spot." The boy pointed at a corner by the curb, the old mailbox scar still faint in the grass. Alex nodded. "The past doesn't vanish. You plant around it." He slipped his phone from his pocket and typed a note to himself. Briarwood pilot, neighborhood equity ordinance. Policy would follow story. It always should. Evelyn patted the swing beside her. "Sit, baby." He sat. For a long, ordinary minute, no one talked about courts or codes or cameras. They just listened to the leaves. The new sapling quivered fragile, alive, stubborn. Somewhere down the block a porch light clicked on. Then another. Not fear, this time. Welcome. And if a passerby paused and looked at the rebuilt house, the paint still bright, the mailbox stubbornly itself, the small plaque near the steps that read "We belong," they might not know the whole story. They'd know enough, because on Briarwood Lane, the night sky no longer glows the wrong color. The only fire that remains is the kind people gather around, hands out, faces lit, voices soft, keeping one another warm. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.